This video on mobile and user experience technologies is going to be focusing on deploying a project to a mobile platform. So we're going to be having a look at how we can actually get some software that we build and deploy that to an Android device. We're going to be using Unity for this. So what I have done so far is fired up Unity Hub. If you go to Unity's website, you should be able to download this Unity Hub program. What this will do is to manage the versions of Unity that you actually have on your machine. So if we head off towards products, and try to find the download page for Unity, there are a couple of options that we have available to us. What we want to do is to go for the individual choice there. You can then sign up either as a student or just go for the personal edition. The personal edition is probably less effort to get started with, but if you're prepared to demonstrate prove your status as a student, you can actually get hold of a little bit more functionality. But either way, the personal will be more than enough for what we want. When you start to download this, you'll get the Unity Hub platform, which then is a downloader for the rest of the Unity platforms itself. So let's go for the personal plan, get started. Go to there, agree to all their conditions, and then you'll be given the Unity Hub setup executable, which you'll have to download and then install. I'm not going to do that because I've already got that on my machine. We get to the stage where we have the Unity Hub. Now, next thing you'll have to do is to get to the installs part of the process, and this is where you can download different versions of Unity for use. What I recommend in this one is go for effectively the most recent version, and to do that, you go to Add. We'll give you a list of the versions that are available. I recommend go for the official releases rather than the pre-releases because there is a lot of new stuff in the pre-releases that isn't particularly stable. A long-term support version is actually quite desirable. Once you select that, they'll be given a couple of options. Now, what you particularly have to look at is the support modules that get downloaded as well. You'll see over here that the Android build support is checked. What I do recommend is opening up that arrow there and making sure that both of these Android SDK and the OpenJDK are ticked as well. There was an issue with Unity previously where the top one would be ticked, but these ones wouldn't, and then you'd have to go and download the whole lot again. You'll notice that this is quite a substantial download, several gigabytes that are involved. So you might want to make sure that you do this well before you need the product. It's going to take a while to actually get all these pieces down. Once you've done that, you go to next and it will start the installation process, and then you just leave Unity Hub running in the background while it installs the versions. I've got a couple of versions of Unity already installed, as you can see. Okay, going back to the projects tab, this is what we're going to do now is we're going to create ourselves a very simple project and demonstrate how to deploy that to an Android device. If you want to deploy to other platforms as well, you generally can, but they often require more specialized support hardware as well. I'm thinking particularly if you're trying to deploy to an iPhone, you'll need to make sure that you have the platforms and the support tools that handle that. And that's less of a, well, it's a bit more of a challenging task. Anyway, the idea with Unity is you can deploy to multiple platforms. So one project, and you can deploy to a range of different platforms from mobile phones or even to web-based systems that can then be picked up by mobile devices as well. I'm going to create a new project here. And what I'm going to do is to say there are a variety of projects that we can have. We're not going to do anything terribly sophisticated here. In fact, probably the 2D would probably be quite adequate for us, but the 3D gives us all that functionality as well. So I'm going to go for the 3D project, and let's give us a name, mobile project is terribly exciting and will be very difficult to identify what this does in the future, but it's good enough for this short demonstration. So we'll create that project. Wait for all that to start up. And then I'll show you the mistake I made. So what Unity is doing when you create a new project is it brings in a whole set of elements to that project that it makes available for you, and has to make sure that these all fit the particular version of Unity that you're working with. Okay, so the mistake I made was to forget to tell it which version of Unity I wanted. You'll see over there that it's gone from 2018.3. I want a much more recent version of this, so I'm just going to close this one again and fire up Unity Hub again. And you'll see there is my new project. It's got a Unity version with it. I'm just going to switch this across to a newer version. Theoretically, I should have clicked that little down arrow next to the new version, and it would allow me to choose which version I wanted to create for. So we're just going to have to open this one again, and now it's going to try and upgrade the project, which is fine. It can do the upgrade for us. It's no extra effort on my part. But all those packages that it imported previously is just going to have to rescan now and make sure that they are updated to be compatible with the latest version of Unity. And there we go again. Okay, it should be nearly done. It's just importing a few of the assets. Okay, so this is Unity once it is running. There are a couple of elements that I'm going to point out at the moment. The idea with this is not to become an expert in Unity, but rather to be able to use this as a tool by which we can create mobile applications very quickly and easily, or build prototype user interfaces and deploy those to mobile applications as well. What we're seeing in the window in front of us, this is going to be the effectively what they call the game view. This is the view that the running application will see. And we can make the application run fairly easily by pressing this play button at the top. It becomes a dark blue once it is playing, and now this is truly the view that we would see in the application when it is running. Now, one point to note, Unity destroys all your changes you make while it's in play mode. You can still edit the project while it's in play mode, but they all get lost as soon as you stop playing. So the advice is switch off play mode before you do anything. Otherwise, you risk having everything go away. So let's move across to this panel on the left-hand side. That's going to be our hierarchy view, and that shows the elements that are on the scene at the moment. What we've got is a camera and we've got a light source at the moment. Those are what is providing this particular viewpoint on the scene and providing whatever lighting effects are present at the moment. The other thing we should point out is the console and project windows. The console is where error messages occur, so keep an eye on this. If you see anything popping up in red, that's usually an error, and that'll give you some idea of what might be happening and perhaps how to go about fixing it. The project tab down there is going, let's open this up a bit so you can see, it's going to have all the elements that you put into the project itself, as opposed into the scene that you're viewing. You can have things in the project that are not visible, but they might be things that you use in other scenes, for example. And by default, we get ourselves a sample scene over here. You'll see it's that one mentioned up there that we've got open. Okay, we may see more assets popping up as we progress, but nothing terribly urgent at the moment. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to my sample scene, and you'll see that there is a plus button over there that allows me to create things. I'm just going to create something just to make this a bit less boring. Let's drop a cube into the scene at the moment. So there is a view of my cube, and I can see a set of properties of the cube on the right-hand side, which I can tinker with. If I want to make that cube bigger, for example, I can increase the scale property and it becomes a bit more visible. If I wanted to make the cube at a bit of an angle, I could rotate it, say, by a few degrees, and we can actually see the 3D structure. Not that this is terribly important, but remember, when I press the play button, this is what my running application is going to look like. Okay, cube doesn't do anything at the moment. Let's do what we really want to do with this video, which is to look at deploying to a mobile device. And so I've got a mobile phone plugged into the laptop using the USB cable, and that is going to be the device that I'm going to want to deploy to. Okay, so to get things going to a mobile device, we're going to go to File and Build Settings. That will pop up another window, and see what it is set to at the moment is to build to a desktop environment, either a Mac or a PC or a Linux system. We just want to switch it across to Android, so we can get it to build to Android devices. And so I'm going to click on Android, and then I'm going to click on this Switch Platform button down there, and that's going to do all of the importing operations that we've previously watched twice already, but it's going to do the conversion of these assets so that they are now compatible with the Android platform. Okay, things probably won't look terribly much different behind the scenes, but effectively our project is now set up to run on Android, and now our buttons down at the bottom here change to build or build and run. So what build will do is to compile the APK file, that's the package format for an Android device. Build and run will build that APK file and then copy it across the USB link to my mobile phone. To find out what device it is, you'll see this run device over there. It will tell you which device it is building for. Press the refresh button so it rescans the devices that I have available to me. And what it should find at that point is I've got a mobile device hooked in. There you can see the screencast from that. And I can then, if I look at my device list, you can see, yes, it's found that Google Pixel that I'm actually working on. So I'm going to select that just to make it explicit that it's going to go to that device. Now, what you need to do is to also set up a few settings on this device. Around this stage, it would normally pop up a little prompt on your device saying, please grant permissions for this laptop to be able to talk over the USB to your mobile phone. It may not be doing this because your mobile phone may not be set up in developer mode at the moment. So what we need to do is to head off to the settings area. And if you haven't set your phone in developer mode, you will generally find under the About phone, this may be different depending on the device that you're dealing with. The trick for getting things into developer mode is to find the build number right at the bottom there, and you have to tap it something like 7 times in quick succession. And then it will say, okay, great, you're a developer. Obviously, I've done that already. And if you go back, you will find a developer menu somewhere popping up under this list over here. So I'm going to go to System, Advanced, and you'll see developer options down at the bottom there is what has been added as because I'm a developer. You go to developer options, and what you want to do is to find USB debugging. I'll switch this off. It's no longer a device that I can deploy things to. I'm going to revoke all authorizations just to show you what the authorization looks like. And then I'm going to switch USB debugging on. So this is what we need to allow USB debugging so that the desktop or the laptop device you use and that you plugged into your phone will be able to use it for transmitting program code. Okay, so now this is the permissions prompt that will come up. We'll say allow USB debugging. It's got to recognize there's a fingerprint for your desktop machine. It's going to say this desktop machine is allowed to always send things. So I'm going to switch on the always allow just because I don't want to have to deal with this prompt every single time I deploy something. And I'm going to say allow. Okay, that phone now should be ready for deployment. And we will now go across to the build and run section. It's going to ask me for the name of the application that I want. It's not going to be particularly visible anywhere, but it will be the file name for the APK file it produces. So let's call this mobproj, just for want of a better name. And now it's going to start building. It does a couple of steps. It tries to detect the Android SDK at this point. So if you didn't do that installation process that I told you about at the beginning and didn't download the Android SDK, this is where it will start complaining. It then has to convert the Unity project into a Java project because that's what Android uses. So it's going to spend a bit of time doing that. I'm just going to pop up the view on the phone as well so we can watch it at the same time. So now it's busy trying to convert the Unity project to a Java project. It has to do, there are a number of pieces of software that it uses, particularly a whole bunch of shaders that determine the way in which various elements look, and it's going to spend a fair amount of time converting those. It does take a lot longer the first time you do it, so second and third times will be a lot faster. Now, once it's built the Java project, it uses a tool called Gradle to compile the Java project so it can actually run on an Android device. And that's going to take a bit of time as well, because that's effectively external to Unity. It doesn't really show you the progress on that, but we'll just sit quietly and watch this build. It may take about 30 seconds to a minute. At which point it's built the APK file, and now because I said build and run, it's going to download it onto the phone. You can see it running over there. Put the phone back into portrait mode. There you go. There is our project deployed on a mobile device. Utterly exciting. It doesn't do anything, of course, but you've achieved the goal of using this technology. You've been able to build a project and actually deploy it natively on a separate device. So normally we'd stop the video at this point, but I want to include a little bit of a bonus feature. What we try and do is to add a little bit of movement to that cube, just so that it doesn't look like it's just so boring and just sitting there. So I'm going back to my Unity project. I'm going to close the build settings, so they're set now. And what I'm going to do is just go back to assets, and I'm going to create myself a new folder over here. I'm going to call that one scripts. Now I'm going to click into my scripts folder, and what I'm going to do is to add a little bit of a script that's going to give me very basic motion for this cube. So I'm going to go inside that folder. I'm going to create something called a C# script. So programming language will be C#, and let's call this bounce cube. Okay, I'm going to double click to open this up, and it will be opened in whatever package your Unity system has set up. It will usually be a form of Visual Studio. And we'll wait for Visual Studio to start opening. Okay, there we go. It's set up a template for us. There is a class with two functions. What you need to know is that start is called once. So anything that you need to do to initialize the cube, you can put into the start method. And then update is called every single frame. So we redraw a frame roughly 60 times a second. So update is called 60 times every second. And we're going to use this in order to be able to do things with our object. So what I want to do is to get the object to move up and down. The up and down direction is the y-axis in this. So I'm going to be manipulating the y-axis, and I'm going to be doing this in a cyclic fashion. So I'm going to be using something like a sine function, because sine functions, if you can see my finger, go up and down and up and down. I'm going to use the up and down part of it with the change in time in order to move our object. So what I need to do effectively is to, if I go back to my cube, into the inspector window, I can control the y value. If I set that to 1, for example, the cube goes up. If I set that to -1, the cube is going to go down. So what I want to do is to just manipulate that value. The way we're going to do this is, you'll see this is called the position, which was part of the transform, which is then part of the cube. And the cube is going to be the object that we're going to attach the script to. So we'll call it this thing that we're attached to, and we want to change its transform and its position. And we're going to set that equal to a new vector 3, because a position consists of an x, y, and z coordinate. I'm going to leave the x unchanged. I'm going to leave the z unchanged. I'm just going to change the y. So I just need to put my semicolon there. I'm going to do stuff to the y value. Okay, and I'm going to set this movement to something called amplitude. It's going to be the height of the movement times, there's our mathf dot sine, and frequency times time dot time. Okay, that should do well, except I need to give it two values called amplitude and frequency. Let's declare those up here, just because I can see opportunities to use these in a later video as well. We'll set amplitude to be a float, and let's set that to be a 2.0, and the f there is just to say it's a floating point value. And we actually need to give the same thing for frequency. And let's try 10.0 frequency at the moment. Okay, press Control S to save that. Go across to Unity. If you've made any mistakes, you'll start to see messages appearing at the bottom there with error messages. And if we go across to our console, we'll see them appear in this case. All we've got left over is messages from our successful build to an Android device previously. Okay, so got my cube selected. You'll see that it has a number of components, a mesh renderer, a box collider. I'm just collapsing those so we can see what's happening. I'm going to take this bounce cube script and I'm going to drag and drop it onto the cube itself. And you'll see that we now get an extra script, something called bounce cube attached, and it has amplitude and frequency values. Strange enough, those are the things that we just created and made public. Okay, so now that bounce cube is attached to the cube, when I press play, this will be invoked and this update method will be called. So let's see what happens when I press play. There goes our cube bouncing up and down using that sinusoidal motion, which is a nice smooth motion, so it looks like it is on a spring. And I'm going to stop it again because I try not to do anything while the play mode is enabled. And I'm just going to go to my build and run option there, which will invoke that build and run, and just switch the phone on so that you can see it when it deploys. It's still got the old project running at the moment. That should be restarted once this new project has finished building. See, it's going a little bit faster than it was. Okay, and now starting to deploy across to the Android device. And there we go, action actually happening on the phone itself. So a bit of fun, and an actual Android application deployed to the mobile device.